Chapter 22. Two of the four remaining riders from Abilene raced towards Sal and the three guards escorting him to the back of the train. As Marcus galloped after them, the other two riders moved to cut him off. Joseph wasn't here for any rescue. He just wanted to make sure Dinah got out of this alive. But that didn't mean he was going to sit back and let Marcus get himself killed on Sal's behalf. Heart pounding, Joseph spurred steel faster. He caught up to Marcus as the riders took aim, one pointing a revolver and the other raising a rifle. Marcus roared and started shooting. They all fired a couple of rounds before a bullet made contact. Joseph's third shot blew a hole in the target's chest, and he fell face first into the dirt. Marcus pushed a new cartridge into his revolver and fired across his body as he and the second rider flew past each other. Joseph glanced over his shoulder. The man slid off his horse, and he sighed in relief. Marcus didn't slow to reload. He holstered his Colt and yanked his Winchester from its scabbard. "Marcus, wait!" Joseph shouted above the howling wind. If he could just get him to stop and listen, to think. A rifle cracked somewhere in front of them. One of the charging horses flipped and landed on its rider. Marcus aimed his Winchester and fired. The last rider slumped over and dropped from the saddle. Steel swerved around the fallen horse, and Joseph turned his gaze to Sal and the guards. One of them lay on the ground, gunned down by the riders from Abilene. That left only two protecting Sal. Even in handcuffs, he carried himself with pride, never in a hurry, never bothered by the violence he was always at the center of, that he caused. Joseph pulled back on the reins, and Morgan surged ahead of Steele. "Marcus!" Still, Marcus ignored him. The bigger of the two guards raised a rifle to his shoulder. The shorter man, wearing a black derby hat, turned and pointed his revolver at Sal's head. "Stop right where you are, or Valentin dies!" Marcus brought his horse to an abrupt halt. Joseph drew alongside him, his lip curling as he noticed the badges on their coats. "Pinkertons," he muttered. The railcar to the detective's left grated open. Inside, Mercer held a gun to Donnie's head. Lawrence panted as he leaned against the door he'd just pushed aside. His shoulders stooped with exhaustion. Dinah stepped out of the darkness and stood between them. Joseph's heart skipped a beat, but she didn't look happy to see him. Her long hair whipped across her glaring eyes. Smoke curled at her feet, her Colt in one hand, and the other balled into a fist. "Identify yourselves," the agent in the derby hat demanded. "No need for that," Lawrence told him with a grimace. "That's Marcus Crane and Joseph Gray." Firelight flickered over the agent's hollow cheeks and sunken eyes, flames roaring and black fumes pouring from the nearby passenger car. "Mr. Crane, Mr. Gray, I'm Agent Cutler of the Pinkerton Detective Agency, and I have a warrant for your arrest. Get off your horses and lay down your weapons, or we will open fire." "I got a better idea," Marcus scoffed. "You let Sal and Donnie go, and we let you live." "We?" Joseph shifted in his saddle. Donnie could rot for all he cared, and when it came to choosing between Sal and Dinah, he'd pick her every time. Cutler scowled and raised his shaven chin. "Look around. You're outnumbered." "By who?" Marcus countered. "A girl and a crippled old man? I'll take those odds." Joseph glanced at Dinah. If everyone starts shooting, nobody wins. He couldn't lose her. "Keep the prisoners," he suggested, "and we all walk away." Marcus's head snapped toward him. "What?" "Do you know our maxim, Mr. Gray?" Cutler responded with nauseating superiority. "We never sleep, nor will we turn a blind eye." "I advise you to consider his offer, Agent Cutler," Lawrence warned. "There's been enough bloodshed." Cutler pursed his lips, his gun still leveled at Sal's head. "My men are dead because of these degenerates. There's nothing to consider." Marcus looked at Joseph and muttered, "Follow my lead." He dismounted, put his rifle on the ground, and stepped forward. "Your revolver," Cutler prompted. Marcus drew his Colt and tossed it behind him. Joseph wasn't sure what Marcus planned to do, but he knew he'd never let them take him alive. He sighed and swung down from the saddle, dropped his Schofields in the grass, and went to stand beside Marcus. His heart pounded, his shirt clinging to his skin. Every sense heightened, every inch of him tensed. His finger twitched, but he had no trigger to pull. Marcus gave him a grateful glance, his dark brows drawing together and his chin jutting, as if to say, "We got this, brother." Joseph drew a deep breath and nodded. They'd always stuck together, no matter what. Still, every man's loyalty had its limits, and Joseph had certainly tested his. He'd expected coldness, maybe even hatred, but Marcus was willing to stand with him. trusted him to have his back. It meant everything to him. "Jennings, Mercer, cuff them," Cutler ordered. Jennings lowered his rifle and strode toward them. Joseph didn't like the tight-lipped smile that creased Donnie's round cheeks as Mercer jumped down from the railcar. Jennings slung his rifle across his back, took 2 pairs of handcuffs from his belt, and tossed one to Mercer. Marcus kept still, holding out his hands in a gesture of surrender. Joseph did the same as Mercer marched toward him. His gaze drifted to Donnie and Dinah, his chest clenching tighter. He's too close to her. Jennings went to clamp the irons on Marcus, the open cuffs coming up under his wrists. Marcus's fingers curled. "Here we go." Marcus swung his arms down and knocked the cuffs out of Jennings' hands. Mercer dropped his and drew his revolver. As Mercer spun toward Marcus, Joseph lunged and tackled him to the ground. He didn't give him a chance to fight back, raining blows on Mercer's face till he knocked him out cold. "That's for Charlie," Joseph growled. Jennings fell beside him, gurgling as blood spurted from his neck. Marcus stood over him with a dripping knife. Breathing hard, Joseph rose with bleeding knuckles and saw Sal strangling Cutler with his own chains. His wildly searching gaze found Dinah pinned in the grass, Donnie fighting to pry her gun from her 2-handed grip. Joseph charged in a blind rage, seeing nothing else, hearing nothing but his hammering heart. Lawrence got to them first. Joseph skidded to a stop as the manhunter came up behind Donnie and grabbed a fistful of his hair. Without a moment's hesitation, Lawrence yanked back his head and slit his throat. Blood sprayed onto Dinah's face, and she cried out as she shielded it with her arms. Lawrence threw Donnie aside, sheathed his knife, and reached down to help her up. "Joseph," Marcus warned. He wheeled around, stared down the barrel of the gun Sal aimed at him. Bang! Marcus slammed into him. Joseph hit the ground hard, pain jolting through his ribs and shoulder. Dazed, he pushed himself upright as shots rang out behind him. Sal ducked and ran. He grabbed Morgan's reins, sprang into the saddle, and whipped his hide. As he galloped away, Marcus sat up and yelled, "Get back here, you piece of... Ugh!" He growled and gripped his right arm. Joseph scrambled to his feet and hurried over to him. "Did he hit you?" he asked, crouching in front of him. "Yeah." Marcus lifted his hand from his bicep and looked down. Blood seeped from a hole in his coat sleeve. "Think it went clean through. Get that wrapped up," Joseph told him. "Don't want you bleeding out on me." He stood and straightened his hat, and Marcus's brow furrowed. "Where do you think you're going?" "To finish this. Not without me, you ain't," Marcus argued. Joseph raised his eyes to Dinah's. Her chest heaved as she stared at him, her face smeared with blood. She'd never be safe, never know peace, not till Sal was dealt with. His beating heart felt like it would burst, desperate to confess the secret he'd buried so deep, the truth he'd finally accepted. But there was a chance he wouldn't survive. He couldn't do that to her. "I'll tell her when I get back." Joseph turned from her and went to retrieve his revolvers. Marcus got to his feet and stormed after him. "Joseph, don't go and do something stupid." "This has gone on long enough, Marcus." Joseph shoved both Schofields into his holsters. "It ends tonight." Steele danced sideways as he climbed into the saddle. "Joseph," Marcus said again, but Joseph spurred the stallion's sides and galloped off into the night. He rode hard and fast with a full moon lighting his path, racing south along the river as he chased after a distant shadow. Morgan's hooves thundered up ahead, just loud enough to rise above the howling in Joseph's ears. The wind drove tears from his eyes, his coat whipping behind him and railroad tracks flying by on his right. Fire raged in his heart. "Son," Sal had called him. "Family." And then he'd pointed a gun at him. He'd almost killed Marcus in his attempt to get rid of him. It was all a lie. "You can't run forever," Joseph yelled. He didn't know if Sal heard him, but he showed no signs of slowing. On and on they went, charging up high hills and plunging down their steep sides. Joseph never even tried taking a shot at him. He wasn't letting him off that easy. Sal veered west, and Joseph did the same. Steele breathed hard, his silver neck lathering and hooves pounding. He can't keep this up much longer. Joseph gritted his teeth and willed the stallion to push on a little farther. Morgan'll hit his limit. Probably already has. Sal headed for a small soddy on a stretch of moonlit plain. Joseph's brow furrowed. What's he doing? When he reached the house, Sal swung down from the saddle as Morgan skidded to a halt. Joseph hoped it was abandoned. Sure looked to be. Half the roof had either blown off or caved in. and the front door had fallen off its hinges. He reined in steel not far from Sal, who stood still and silent, waiting. His chest tightened. Steele tossed his head and restlessly shifted. Mustering his courage, Joseph dismounted. His boots thudded on the hard ground. He drew a deep breath, his heart slamming against his ribs as he patted the stallion's sweaty neck. Steele's big black eye looked at him, and a lump stuck in Joseph's throat. "It's been a hell of a ride, partner. Thank you." He turned away and walked toward Sal. Thunder rolled in the distance, strange shadows crawling over the ground as clouds passed in front of the moon. Sal's coat stirred in the wind, his dark hair blowing across his sober face. Did he fear death? Did he feel anything at all? Joseph clenched his jaw, spurs clinking and boots crunching through the grass. He'd spent his whole life running from the law, dodging the noose, never realizing that his greatest enemy had been right beside him all along. Had raised him, had taught him everything he knew and shaped his view of the world, of himself. When Joseph stopped, he'd cut the distance between them in half. Sal never moved, never even blinked. "I didn't want it to come to this," Joseph said. "Yes, you did," Sal responded with a slow nod. "You chose this the moment you betrayed me." Joseph's blood boiled. "You could have sent anyone to kill Dinah. It wasn't about getting rid of her. It was about keeping me in line." Sal shook his head in disappointment. "You had so much potential, and one bad day ruined you. One silly little girl." Joseph's mouth went dry. He swallowed and squared his shoulders. "That's the difference between you and me. I've got a conscience." Sal's thick brows furrowed, a dangerous flicker in his heavy-lidded eyes. "I told Dinah what you did, that you're the one who killed her friend." Joseph's heart plummeted. Sal tilted back his head and grinned. "You should have seen the look on her face." Joseph's hopes shattered. Every future he'd imagined with her went up in flames. That explained how she acted back at the train, when he found her and Lawrence on the road outside Salina. The hatred in her eyes, the heartbreak. "She will never forgive you," Sal gloated. "And you gave up everything for her." Fury crashed over him. Sweeping aside his fear, Joseph grasped his revolver. "Then I guess I got nothing left to lose," Sal sneered. "You can't beat me." His hand moved, and Joseph drew. His finger froze over the trigger as Sal threw away Cutler's gun. "Now it's fair." Joseph gritted his teeth. He couldn't kill him like this, no matter how badly he wanted to. "Pick it up," he demanded. Sal tossed his coat onto the ground. "Pick it up." Sal rolled up his sleeves, and Joseph huffed. He shoved his Schofield back into his holster, shrugged off his coat, and unbuckled his gun belt. "You ain't so invincible as you think. Jesse Hance proved that." Sal scowled and stalked toward him. "Jesse Hance is dead, and when we're finished here, his daughter will join him." A savage instinct overcame him, unhinged him. Joseph roared and charged. Sal planted his feet and crouched like a cougar. Joseph lunged to take him to the ground, but his arms closed around empty air as Sal ducked low. His shoulder rammed into Joseph's gut, knocked the breath from his lungs, and drove him backward. His ribs jarred as he hit the ground, his hat flipping off his head. Sal raised his fist. Thunk! The impact of his punch rippled through Joseph's face, but he felt no pain. Not until Sal's bare knuckles bashed the bridge of his nose. Joseph's eyes watered, blurring his vision as he reached up and grabbed Sal's vest with both hands. Sal landed another blow as they struggled, then another. Finally, Joseph wrestled him onto his back. He tasted blood, and a vengeful impulse surged in him. All those times he'd wished he could fight back, biting his tongue as Sal lectured and belittled him, suffering his humiliations in silence. My turn. The anger he'd muzzled, the backtalk he'd swallowed, the guilt he carried. Joseph unleashed it all. He pounded Sal's face with bleeding knuckles, reveling in every sting, every shock that jolted up his arm. Sal batted his arm aside, yanked him down and banged their foreheads together. When Joseph came to, he was lying on his stomach. A flash of lightning blinded him. Thunder rattled his throbbing head as he pushed himself up onto his hands and knees. Sal had already gotten to his feet, and he drove the toe of his boot into Joseph's ribs. He landed on his side, groaning as his aching fingers dug into the dirt. Get up! He dragged his knees under him, and Sal kicked him again, this time in the jaw. Joseph bit his tongue and grimaced. He spat blood as Sal circled him. There was a black stain under Sal's broken nose. His upper lip had been cut open, blood dripping into his mouth and trickling into his beard. Joseph rose on trembling legs. "I've got to finish him." Sal marched toward him, and Joseph rushed to meet him. As they grappled, he grabbed a handful of Sal's shirt and clawed at his vest. Battling for control, Sal gave him a violent push, catching him off guard. He stumbled backward, and Sal swung at him. Joseph stopped his punch with his hand, countered with a right hook that knocked Sal's head sideways, with a fresh spatter of blood. Joseph's teeth smacked together as Sal brought his fist up under his jaw. He staggered. Sal snatched a fistful of his hair and thrust his fist into his gut. 2, 3, 4 times, each strike forcing Joseph another step back. His heel hit something hard, and it didn't give way. Panic jolted through him as he lost his balance. Sal shoved both palms against his chest, and Joseph toppled over an unseen edge. He reached out for the only thing that could stop his fall, but Sal just watched, his black eyes wild and triumphant. "Too late," the words echoed in Joseph's mind, in those last terrifying moments before darkness swallowed him. Too late.